Hello, welcome. I'm Paul Jameson from TwentyEA, and I am delighted to say that we have a star-studded guest lineup today. And we're going to be talking about how estate agents can increase fees and market share in 2023. Really looking forward to this one. So just to introduce the panel, we've got Chris Watkin, one of the key influencers in the property market, would you say?
I wouldn't say that, but thank you for the kind words.
We've got Vicky Bibris, MD of Location, one of the top estate agents in the UK, award-winning, always voted near the top. Welcome, Vicky.
Thank you.
And our very own Stuart Ducker, who runs our data team at TwentyEA. And if you ever want to chat about what's happening in your local marketplace, Stuart is the man.
I am, yeah.
So jumping straight in then, I think we're going to have a really good discussion today. So we don't like to make predictions or forecasts too much at TwentyEA. However, I think it's probably fair to say that when you speak to people in the know in the market, the likelihood that transactions may fall in next year or certainly in the coming months. And as an estate agent, there's really only two ways to maintain or increase your revenue when that happens. You need to sell more properties and have a bigger share of that pie, or you need to charge more. So if you're doing less transactions, you need to get more for your money, or ideally both. So Chris, is that a fair assessment? Have you got anything to add on that?
Definitely. I mean, the average number of transactions in the UK is 1.1 million per year. Last year we had 1.4. And if the market tightens, which it probably will, we'll probably come down to about 850,000, which means probably off last year's figures, we're going to sell 40% less houses, potentially, or even 15, 20% less than a normal year. So you're going to need a bigger slice of the market. Now, interestingly, if you increased your fees from, say, 0.85 to 1.3, even if you had a reduction in transaction levels, you'll earn more money. I find it fascinating that the Property Academy have published through their home buyer survey for the last 16 years, the average fee. And the average fee in 2006 was 1.6%, whilst today it's 1%. And that line is a straight line. Even when, I hate to use the word, the purple bricks thing. Mm-hmm. Everyone blamed purple bricks for degradation on fees. Purple bricks had no effect whatsoever on fees. It's just that we had someone to blame as an estate agency profession. Our fees have been dropping since 2006 because we don't know our own worth. And more importantly, we can't portray our value to customers to say that we're worth more. It's not our job to get the vendor to accept that we're worth the money. It's got to be the vendor actually seeing that we're worth the money. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense, and I totally agree with you. I think you're absolutely bang on. So for me, it's not how you prove your worth, how you demonstrate your worth. Yeah. So upon attending a valuation or a market appraisal, helping people understand how you differentiate yourself, why your offering's different, and how you can add more value to them.
But you could almost say you've already made the decision before the vow. You've got to prove that worth.
Oh, absolutely.
Before the vow. I mean, how, in every town, there's 10, 20, 30 estate agents. Your first job is to be called out as one of the 3 estate agents for that.
That's one of the hardest jobs, especially when you're up against that volume of people. And it's exactly the same in my town. So how do you differentiate yourself as an agent and as an agency? How do you add more value to your local community first before they actually need you?
I mean, I see attracting homeowners to an agency is like trying to attract a mate, boyfriend or a girlfriend when you're out on the pool. And, I find it fascinating that, if I was 18 years old and walked into the local Wetherspoons and shouted out, hey, does anyone want to marry me? The chances of me even going home with the girl at the end of the night, let alone actually getting married, are 0.
I wouldn't say 0, Chris.
You're too kind. But that's what most estate agents do with their marketing. All marketing is trying to persuade somebody to do something. And you as estate agents are shouting from the rooftops with your marketing, hey, we're an estate agent, come and use us. But if you actually look at most estate agents' marketing on their Facebook, it's listing, 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 listing. Look what we've sold. Listing, listing. Oh, here's a testimonial. Listing. Mm. We want more listings. So what we do is we show people what we've listed.
Yeah.
When in reality, we should be marketing ourselves to try and attract people to you. Just because you put a house on the market ain't going to mean someone else is going to put the house on the market with you.
Yeah, the interesting thing is what's been happening is that we've seen 90% of instructions, that sort of order of magnitude, come from properties that are already off the market. And you were saying earlier that you'd expect that to change perhaps in a discussion that we were having offline, so that more properties would actually be sold by a second agent, where at the minute the percentage of those is actually relatively low.
And just on that, so yeah, as Stuart says, I think out of those 90%, at least 60, 70% of those haven't been on the market at all in the last 5 years. So if I'm an estate agent in my local town, how do I identify those? How do I market to those people? Because they might not necessarily be in my database. So what practical ways? Because I think you're right. If I'm aware of some estate agents who are instructing vendors, and they're the only agent invited out because they've got a strategy in place. And actually, the vendor is so bought into that estate agent, they're only having one valuation. And the beauty of that, when it's uncontested, it's a lot easier to charge a higher fee because they're already going to use you. So you can charge 1.5%, 2% because they already love you. So in terms of people watching this today, how can we market and how can we kind of speak to our local marketplace when we don't necessarily know they're going to come to market? What kind of strategies do you use, Vicky?
So a variation of strategies, but if we talk about from a data perspective, I'm conveniently here with you guys today and obviously using your data, and there's definitely other suppliers for it too. But writing to people with forecasted data, because you guys know better than most.
Guys and girls, honestly, these guys have a bit of kit where they have a propensity to move, and they give you the addresses. And I thought it was voodoo magic, and I checked it out. And again, I'm not being paid to say this, but this, I can't use the S word, can I?
You can if you want.
Yeah, I'm going to. This shit works, okay? And actually, so good that these guys won. And again, you think we're being paid to say this, but trust me, we're not.
We should be though, but we'll think about that later.
We'll get a Nando's out of them afterwards. Okay, but what sort of percentage? What sort of on the past data, what percentage can you judge on what's going to come on the market?
Well, I know the answer to this, but I'll let Stuart answer because it's his team that's built the model.
There's something like 85% of new instructions we've correctly predicted over the course of the last year.
Because it's a demographic. You know damn well the type of people who are going to move. There's so much data out there. You as estate agents won't know that. So you target those people. But the important thing is what do you target them with?
That's the key bit.
Okay. Now, if you're an estate agent that says, hi, we're an estate agent, we're brilliant, and our willies are this big, and we're amazing, and we're brilliant, and we've got a market share, and we are awesome, and we are brilliant. That's just like someone at the party who talks about themselves all night.
Yeah.
It's all about, grabbing the attention of the people and knowing who to talk to, which is where the data comes in, but then drip feeding them stuff which nurtures them through to the point where you're the only agent of choice. So that's one way of doing it, but there are other ways that you can do it which don't involve data. You live in Stoke Newington, your agency's in Stoke Newington. So where do 100% of Stoke Newington homeowners live?
Stoke Newington.
Who are the only people that join Stoke Newington Facebook groups?
Stoke Newington residents.
So why don't you, again, where agents go wrong is this. They publish their great content and put it onto their agency page, and the only person that gets to see it is people who've liked this agency page. And who's the only people that like a estate agent's page? You and your
other estate agents and
your
friends
mum.
and my mum.
Okay. But your mum would be proud of whatever you did.
Well, yeah.
But the magic thing is this: is if you in those groups, don't talk about yourself. Don't talk about what you've sold. Talk about stuff that's of interest to other people, because we come back to this dating game. Is this there's science behind does anyone do business with anyone they don't trust?
No.
So instead of trying to chase the outcome, which is getting the listing, why don't you actually work out, how do I get people to trust me? And you get people to trust you scientifically. All the friends watching this, who you have friends, first you get to know them, then you get to like them, then you trust them. So it's know, like, and trust. So how do you get someone to know you? You have to be interested in them. How do you get someone interested in you? By being interested in them first. So, if I was in Stoke Newington, I'd be using data that you guys have, and other sources are available for other data. Talk about the Stoke Newington property market to Stoke Newington people.
Community.
What's happening to house prices? What's happening to rents? What's happening to yields? What's moving? Which sector of the market's moving faster than the other? Chuck this out. No one in Enfield will give a monkeys about what's happening in Stoke Newington, but Stoke Newington people are interested in Stoke Newington properties. We are the gatekeepers to the second most interesting topic in the world to the Brits, which is the property market, but not the property market, what's happening to my house. talk about that. So
Yeah.
that's what I would do.
Kind of related to that. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a hybrid estate agent earlier on in our discussions. But effectively, the reason why they've been so good at attracting those off-market people is because of TV advertising in the man. I'm talking about the big players now. And
We're talking about that free estate. I can mention it. Strike.
Well, I'm just interested in your opinions as to what's going to happen, because as the market becomes less of a seller's market and more of a buyer's market, because it was never about online versus traditional. It was always about pay up front models versus pay on completion. And I know a lot of the hybrids will say that they offer both models these days, but surely there is going to be a switch to more people choosing to do pay on completion as part of a switch. I mean, do you expect that? Do you think that's going to happen?
Well, I'll let Vicky answer that first, and then I'll follow.
I mean, I certainly expect it. I think it's a no-brainer. Ultimately, agents now prove their worth. Now agents can really add value. We found it really, to be honest, as great as the market's been in the last couple of years, every single team member, which is credit to the kind of team that I have and the kind of people that they are, were really disappointed in the lack of service that they were able to offer during that time. Now we get to be really good agents again. We get to really support our sales progressor, our buyers, our sellers, up and down the chain, do the hard work and the legwork that it takes. When consumer confidence has been rocked to the degree that it has, and you have a chain of homes and of individuals selling and buying and really concerned about what it is that they're going to face, you need a sounding board, you need really good advice, you need expert knowledge to get you through the issues that we're still facing, and that could be around EWS1, it could be the various topics that on other agents that offer a free model or a pay up front model just don't, in order to be able to facilitate that kind of business, just don't have the resources to pull it off. And that there's always going to be a space for them. And you know what? That is absolutely fine. If you want to sell your home for free and you want to do it yourself, go for it. And a lot of the times in a challenging market, sellers will realise, actually, do you know what, this is really hard and I don't know how to do it. I don't have the know-how, and where's the estate agent that I need? And there'll probably be a big proportion of the people that we said would move into the segment of selling the second time around. They'll come up with challenges and then see that their home falls through or the sales fall through and so on and so forth, and then they'll shift to a more traditional agent. So I do feel like there's space for them, and there are people that want that experience, that want to work with a free or online agent because for whatever reason, the stigma against traditional agents is just far too damning for them to even consider it. I have a common quote that I use quite often: those who don't listen must feel. And if you don't want to listen to the good local agent that can add value and support you through that process, and you want to try the other option, you might feel in a market like this where it's slightly more challenging, you're going to feel it. That's my only concern.
Yeah, it's okay paying up front if they're selling 80% of
We all
properties,
know
but
how
also
hard it is. It's not an easy job, and I'm sure the listeners will agree. Agency is absolutely not easy. So, yeah, I mean, if anyone can tell me how to do it better without actually doing it, then I'll be all ears.
I think the online market has been for the last couple of years has been hovering around the 6 or 7% range. Is that about right?
Yeah, 7 point. It's actually going
falling
down. It's falling.
Now again, I'm going to use my stats, not necessarily yours, but Purple Bricks have had a slight drifting off of market share, and I would actually say that Strike have actually picked what Purple Bricks have lost. Strike have come in. They've been very good striking like towns like Sheffield and where they've focused their TV advertising. The question is how much is it costing them to do that versus the money they're coming in off the extras. I think it's very easy. Again, we've recently just lost Boomin, if you remember, and a lot of people didn't. A lot of people say one of the reasons is that the industry didn't like what Michael and Kenny Bruce did with Purple Bricks. I think what Booming were doing was an exceptional piece of kit. It's just that unfortunately, or fortunately, estate agents are very people orientated. They're very emotional, and they blamed what they tried to do with those adverts on the market. When in reality, I don't think it's on market versus high street. I just think that there is a segment of homeowners that want it, that are attracted by TV advertising. There are some that always go for the cheapest, which is free or. And again, the problem with free is sometimes as human beings say, well, where's the catch? So don't focus on the fact that you keep seeing one estate agent with an advert all the time. the simple fact is that you've got 92, 90, 94% of the market. What are the other 15 agents in your town doing against you? And what are you doing to get your market share or your fair share of the pie? And if you look at most agents' marketing, they don't deserve to be successful because it's listing, listing, listing. Look how awesome we are. Listing, listing, listing. No one likes to be sold to, but if you go out there and prove that you're worth and be valuable and interesting using content marketing, being part of the community, people will be naturally attracted to you. They then get to know you, like you, then trust you, so you become the only agent of choice. Savills have been doing this for years, 30 years. Why don't we just copy what they do? They just happen to target the posh end. Why? Because it's where most of the money is.
So what are vendors interested in then? You know, are you going to sell my property? Are you going to sell it?
No,
Right?
we need
they
to
want
get
somebody to guide them through the
Well,
process.
okay, let me ask you a
basically what
question,
you're
Stuart. Tonight, if there's a brand new facade board on your street that wasn't there this morning, what are you going to do?
saying. Property porn. Look at it on Rightmove, basically.
You look at the pictures. Would you do the same if the facade board was a mile down the road?
Probably not,
So why do you look at the one on your street and not the one a mile down the road?
because I'm interested in the price of my own property and the effect that it's going to have in my localised area.
So I would say that people are obsessed about the value of their own home. Would you say that, Paul?
Yep, completely.
Okay. We know damn well everyone on Rightmove will go on, everyone who sees a brand new facade board will go on Rightmove. I mean, look at the stats. You know, on average, about 160,000 people move every month for sale and rent. Okay. So therefore, at any one time, there should be 100, if people are looking now and buying now, because it's that sort of market, isn't it? You know, there should be 160,000 people looking. We'll put the 20,000 estate agents on, a few surveyors. So at any one time, there should be 250,000 people on Rightmove at any one time. Rightmove gets 14 million visits a month. Okay, so what are the other 13.7 million people doing? Property porn, they're on Rightmove all the time looking. We are the gatekeepers, like I said, to the most interesting topic in the world after the weather. Talk about the local property market to local people, and you'll become the most interesting person in the world. That's what people aren't going, you know, I'm not thinking to myself, my God, if my wife decides to leave me next week, I'm going to ring up these 3 solicitors for a divorce. No one thinks that. They're just getting on with their lives, aren't they? Just getting on with their lives, and then something awful happens in their world or something awesome happens in the world, be it death, divorce, pregnancy, whatever. Right, we need to move. And people just call out the first 3 estate agents that come into their head. So you need to be in there. People aren't thinking, if my husband walked out at me tonight, I'd ring up this estate agent to sell it. People don't think that way. They just get on with their lives, and when the shit hits the fan or something good happens, technical term, you like that technical term?
I do.
People just ring up the first 3 agents that come into their head, and your job as an estate agent is to get your name in there before. And if all you're doing is going listing, 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 look how awesome we are, your name is not going to be in there. But if you're actually saying, this is what's happening in our Stoke Newington property market, this is us doing a show with the kids at Halloween, which is what you guys did at Location, interviewing the shopkeepers about Stoke Newington and why it's a lovely place to live. What's that got to do with selling houses? Nothing, but everyone in Stoke Newington's fascinated with Stoke Newington.
And when you look at, like, I can only draw on my own experience, and you'd assume that, you know, I'm an estate agent, I go to work, I sell houses, right? Well, the volume of work that we need to do behind the scenes to support our local community, to be involved in the business association. I'm actually a treasurer of the business association. We've created a whole new campaign that's funded by our local council to bring in more business for our local businesses, and encourage people to visit our town and so on and so forth. That doesn't, directly benefit me in any kind of way, but it's benefiting my community. And when you create, if anybody's read Purple Cow, such an incredible book, you create sneezers out of your community, and they're recommending you. And then there's other things that you're doing, getting involved with the local schools, other charity events, doing things at Halloween, doing things at Christmas, children Christmas parties. We're an estate agency.
And that's how you get called out to more properties. Yeah. But this is the killer bit, is this. The next one is fees. And now here's a question. I know you know the answer. But what percentage of sellers go with the cheapest estate agent?
Go on.
Have a guess. Which estate? Okay, so
10%.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to ask this in 2 ways. Straight out and out, what percentage of homeowners went with the cheapest estate agent? That's just one question.
The cheapest estate agents are hybrid. We already know the answer to that. It's 7%.
Okay. When Peter Knight did his Property Academy survey, it was 1 in 6 or 17%. So therefore, he asked the second question: what are your 5 biggest reasons on choosing an estate agent? Okay, number 1, the agent I felt confident in ability to market my property. Number 2, they had good market knowledge. I wonder where we could get data from that. Hey, I don't know. They liked 67%. I liked and trusted them. 65%. I was pleased with the valuation of my property. 56%. They handled lots of properties similar to mine. 17%. They had the lowest fee. So even when you asked it as one of 5, they had 10 or 11 options. Fee was still only 7.
Yeah. And Chris, just touching on that, I think so stage 1, an estate agent needs to have local marketing strategies to immerse themselves in their local market and become that go-to agent
Get
choice.
eyeballs on. If you haven't got
Fantastic.
attention, they won't listen to
So
you.
people listening to that, go away and think, how can I go away and do that?
And you do that by not talking about yourself or your firm or your services, but by talking about stuff they're interested in.
Great. Stage 2, let's imagine we've gone through that in the next 6 months and we're getting lots more lead valuation requests in. And I think there'll be valuers sat here listening to us today going, well, it's easy for them to say I should be charging 2%, not 1%. But I think it's a mindset thing. I think it's a confidence thing. And I think there's valuers out there who haven't had the training they need to have the confidence to demand that. And you've just reeled off what people want to hear, but I think you need to be trained on that stuff. And I think there's business owners that perhaps don't give their valuers the tools they need. So if we just discuss training, do you think training is really important when you're coming to demanding a higher fee? And how big is training in your agency, Vicky?
Training is absolutely crucial. In fact, it's a regular occurrence, apart from the mindset training session that we do, because I feel personally there's huge value for our team members and for us in doing so. I can tell you that this week alone, there's been 2 45-minute sessions booked in. One's already been conducted yesterday and another one due on Thursday. And that's on nurturing conversations and how to speak to vendors, especially given around, booking and valuations, nurturing, prospecting, and so on and so forth. The fee is most definitely in the head of the agent. It's definitely a mindset issue. If you think you can't charge 1.5%, you can't charge 1.5%. But if you can't demonstrate, and if your leadership team, for example, aren't demonstrating how we add value, what's different, why? So if you go back to the questions or to the answers even that the Property Academy results proved, I felt that I liked and trusted them. Great. Make sure your team are likable and trustworthy and so on and so forth. It goes a very long way. I felt confidence in their ability to market my home. How do you market their home? What do you do better than anybody else in your town?
You have to show them something. Actually, have to show them something, and what it means to the punter. And you can back that up with data. You guys at 20EA have that lovely price achieved stats where you actually choose a town, and if everybody sold the same house, what would you actually get for it? And then there's stats behind it to say, if you went with that agency, you would get £420,000 for it. And if you come with us, here's the stats on the screen on my laptop, we would get you 428, which means if you go with the other agent, you will lose £8,000. And it's very easy. I think estate agents, I find it fascinating that there's 15,000 estate agents, firms in the UK, not offices, firms. But I challenge anyone to get beyond those fingers on how many trainers there are.
Mm.
Yep. Can you name more than 10? That's not, but can you name more than 10 estate agency trainers? God's sake, that's one trainer between 1,500 estate agents. And I think we as estate agents, let's be honest, location. There's a reason why you're number 1 in the country and everyone loves you to bits and you're thought leaders, is you do training and development. But I think there's plenty of values out there that probably the last training they went on is when they worked for Bairstow Eaves back in 2008.
And I think you're right. I think the fact that there's that many agents and 10 trainers means 99% of agents aren't training their staff.
Oh.
And it's a really important thing because you're right, it's all about the mindset and having the confidence. But at the end of the day, you do need to have the tools and USPs to stand out.
Absolutely, but I'm sure if you ask a huge chunk of those 15,000, you know, on average, what percentage do you achieve in terms of your asking price or marketing price on a home? They wouldn't actually even know the answer. So the data's key, the understanding key. So there is a knowledge gap that needs to be filled here. And a common one, I mean, I loved what you were just saying there in terms of, you know, when you consider what percentage of asking price we achieve. I mean, our common line is, guys, we pay for ourselves and some. But if you don't know that data in the first instance and you have that knowledge gap, then how can you add value to the seller upon that valuation?
I was going to say, based on what Chris said, on that same report, if you look in some of the London areas, the difference between a good agent and a bad agent can be £80,000.
And on those reports, and again, as I said, I know we're not being paid to say this, but you know, people are wanting certainty that you're going to sell the house. Now, I'm not going to mention names, but in London, there are, you know, in the top 10 estate agents, there is one agent who will have a 6.5, you know, if they put 100 houses on the market, they'll exchange contracts on 65 of them. And there is another agent who, and will not mention their name here, who is a big agent, well known, that will only convert 27 out of 100. Now, if you were the other agent and you were talking to that person saying, if you come on the market with me, you will have a 6.5 out of 10 chance of actually getting it through. If you go with the others, you only have a 1 in 4 chance. And again, coming back, facts is something, but I think another thing that's very important is we're dealing with humans, and unfortunately they're not logical animals, they are emotional. And I think it's important that estate agents learn the art of storytelling, because all stories are just facts enriched with context and delivered with emotional impact. And it's why you can't remember what your other half told you to do today to go when you go to the shop to get the shopping, but you can remember the film lines and the stories, and you can remember Cinderella. You know, let's look at Cinderella. There was one part is girl loses shoe because she's got a funny foot. Okay, and the other one is Cinderella, and we all know what Cinderella is. Tell stories. So if you're an estate agent and you're up against another estate agent who's offering a cheap fee and an overvalued, don't just say, well, Mr. Vendor, look at all these 4 beds. This is obviously £400,000 and they're 450. That vendor's got to persuade his or her partner. You've actually got to say, Mrs. Vendor, we had a similar situation 6 months ago where we had a lady who wanted to move down to Falmouth to be near her daughter. This particular agent basically said her house should go on the market at 450 when the evidence was 400. Let me show you her property here. And let me show you all the other properties at the time which were this prices here. The estate agent quite clearly said 450 and she went with it. Unfortunately, the house that she wanted in Falmouth, which was on the same street as her daughter, sold because she didn't sell hers. And she ended up having to move to the next town along because of this bad advice of the estate agent. Mrs. Vendor, would you say you want to move down to Tewkesbury to be near your son? I'm telling you, I don't want, you know, this might not happen, but if this happened to this lady because the agent, here is the evidence, these are the stories, do you want to potentially miss out on your daughters? And then it's at 3 o'clock, you know, when you're at night time, oh, effing hell, that's a technical term. Really good, yeah. Oh my God, I don't want to risk it.
Yeah.
We've got to use stories and emotions. That was basically my Monday training session. And the powerful, yeah. And the power of storytelling is key, but also, guys, we can't give up if we don't win it the first time round and the seller makes the mistake of going on for the higher value with the other agent. So the data that you guys provide and is readily available is seeing the percentages of what properties, and all of these properties that have been reduced, they're not small numbers. They're not the extra, 0.6% that you quibbled over when it came to the fee. These guys are reducing by 5, 7.5, even more percentage them. So when you can, use the information that you have with the storytelling and explain that actually when you consider, it might sound like a great idea initially going on for this price, but the longer you're on, the less you'll get. And if you do need to be reduced or have your price corrected at a later stage, this 0.6% that we're quibbling over is nothing. You face losing tens of thousands by making the wrong decision.
And loss is more powerful than gain.
Yeah.
Need, greed, or fear? People always fear is by far the most powerful reason, isn't it? I suppose.
And it's still good advice.
So we've got to go out and have a strategy to get more valuations in. We've got to have a skilled pitch. We've got to ask the right questions. We've got to listen. I think listening and finding that motivation. What do they want? Do they want to move quickly? Do they need the highest price? Whatever that might, do they need to move? So you need to find that out and kind of tug on those heartstrings.
And back your stories up with data.
And back it up with data. And I suppose you touched on it, Chris, probably just finally. You hopefully win the instruction, which is fantastic. Most agents on a pay on completion model then have to sell it. Have you got any, just really quickly, any practical tips, either of you, to kind of reduce fall throughs, withdrawals, and make sure that you're more likely to sell that? I suppose it's coming into the sales progression territory.
The sales progression territory is really key. If you don't have a sales progressor, then you need to ensure your team are really highly trained in that space in order to be able to get that sale across the line wherever possible. But in order to ensure you have the best result, your marketing strategy and your pricing strategy needs to be key to sell it in the first place. Once you've got it over the line, the communication level is absolutely key. And it might mean in many instances, because there's a lack of good progression in our industry, that you're working up and down the chain if you need to. So build a relationship with the local agents or whoever may be involved in that chain to ensure that the communication levels are where they need to be so that you retain as much confidence in the sale as possible. There's nothing that rocks a deal more than a lack of communication and a lack of confidence.
I find it fascinating that estate agents don't instruct solicitors straight away to start preparing the contract and the pre-inquiry forms. I find it fascinating that people don't, the vendor doesn't pay for the local searches because they're taking an awful long time. And you could say, well, what if they sell? Well, you as an estate agent are spending hundreds of pounds preparing this property. Why the hell can't your vendor do that? I think there's a lot of valuers out there that are worried that they don't want to put off their listing or have a chance of putting the listing off by asking some money for this. But surely by preparing the contract, and such things as reservation agreements with firms like Gazelle and other firms are available, then it's not a case of putting the house on the market, it's getting it ready for sale. So when someone does come along, it can go through quicker.
Do you think that's a big differentiator? Because one of the things that we have seen in the last year is that time to progress, so that, you know, from getting an offer on your property to actually completing on it has increased dramatically.
I find it fascinating that when I were a lad, I mean, I'm 51 now, but when I joined a estate agency over 30 years ago, 12 weeks was considered a long sales progression. It's now, is it 19 weeks?
I might be older than you because I moved into my first flat, which was a leasehold property, in 6 weeks. But now it's, I don't know, 4.5 months.
6
on
months.
average, I think.
But again, a lot of that is estate agents are trying to squeeze the lemon too much. I'm not a fan personally of factory conveyancers and where the agent takes more of the fee than the conveyancer. So you've got conveyancers that are doing hundreds of 150 transactions. You're going to, if they've got 150 transactions, it's going to take longer. Build up relationships with local solicitors. For the sake of earning an extra £100, if you can get your bloody sales through.
And are you finding that you're having to deal with more breaks in chain and things like that?
Most definitely, but I think where you're advising people correctly, because what we always encourage to do where it's reasonable and appropriate to do so is encourage people to break the chain, because the situation's got way too out of hand. We will not use these, factory conveyancers in order just to get a kickback on every deal, because we'd actually just rather that sale go through and the client has a better experience, and so does our sales progressors. So we'll always work really closely with a local solicitor that will do a much better job. But people are now having, because we've had such an issue with, the length of deals, that there's so many conveyancers that are way too overwhelmed. I know estate agents felt like that over the last couple of years, but some of the stories that I've heard from solicitors have been really overwhelming.
And that's affected the market because a lot of mortgage offers are coming to the end. If we didn't have these delays, we wouldn't have had these mortgage offers falling out of bed.
And that's one of the biggest reasons that a lot of deals are falling through recently.
So you don't fear breaks in chain?
Absolutely not, but it has to work for the individuals that are involved. If you've just had a young baby, there's no way that I'm going to recommend that you break the chain and leave your home. If the circumstances mean it so that, listen, Mr. Seller, we've got such a good price that wholeheartedly I don't feel we'll get again, and this opportunity will come round again, then we should strongly consider it.
And again, I guess it's about storytelling with respect
Yeah.
to that as well.
Yeah,
isn't it?
absolutely. You know, and there's going to be so many instances, I'd imagine, that you can draw on where you can find other people's experiences and share that with your seller or your buyer. And it's up to people just to really think about what works best for them. Do you want to risk starting this whole process again, getting less, and securing a higher rate, because now we're dealing with new mortgage offers and so on and so forth? Or so it's just about what's best for them. But that will be really common. We are going to struggle in this space moving forward, but as the workloads calm down for both agents and because of the volume and conveyancers, I think this will ease off, and then those timescales should start to come back again.
Great. Well, I think let's leave it there. I think there's going to be people listening to this today, and I think there's lots of practical hints and tips and strategies there. And I'd encourage the very best agents who listen to this to action it. Go away to your boss, go away and make sure you've got answers and strategies for all these places, because we've covered the whole of the customer, the moving journey there. And I think if you really are clear in your head and have strategies for each one of those, I think next year could be a really prosperous year, despite what happens in the market. And I think ignore the market and concentrate on what you can control, and that's you and your agency. So yeah, Chris, Vicky, Stuart, thank you very much, and thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.